In Lisbon, Portugal, a young man named Fernando Pessoa takes a walk through the city. He's a quiet man, introspective, and often lost in thought. As he strolls, he contemplates his writings, the looming shadow of self-doubt and a growing realization. He is not one man, but many. Pessoa once said, "I am not a man. I am a collection of men." Behind his solitary figure, there lurks a multitude of identities, personas that will come to shape not only his life, but his legacy as one of the most enigmatic writers of the 20th century. Pessoa would go on to create these heteronyms, complex literary avatars that each had their own personalities, philosophies, and even biographical details. None of them, however, were truly Fernando Pessoa. They were the author, or should I say authors, who never existed. But there's more to Pessoa's life and work than just these literary experiments. There's the shadowy figure of the Book of Disquiet, a strange and fragmented narrative that is often described as a work of profound disillusionment, existential reflection, and fragmented identity. It's the tale of a soul divided, a soul that, like Pessoa himself, never quite comes together. This book, like Pessoa's life, is a puzzle with pieces scattered across the pages. As Pessoa himself wrote, "I write, and I do not know who I am." But what is the story behind it? What does it tell about the man who wrote it and the paradox of identity itself? To understand the Book of Disquiet and its strange origins, we need to first grasp the philosophy of Fernando Pessoa. Pessoa was obsessed with the concept of self. He did not view identity as a stable, singular thing. Instead, he believed that a person is the composite of multiple conflicting selves. "I am many things," Pessoa once remarked, "and each of them is more real than the others." This idea runs through much of his work, but it's perhaps most strikingly embodied in the character of Bernardo Soares, the protagonist of the Book of Disquiet. Soares is not just a character in the traditional sense. He's an extension of Pessoa's own fragmented self, persona within a persona. Pessoa's most famous literary invention, though, is the notion of the heteronym, a concept that goes beyond the typical pen name. A heteronym isn't just a pseudonym. It is a fully formed individual with a unique worldview, distinct writing style, and even biographical details. Pessoa created dozens of these heteronyms, each representing different facets of his psyche. There was Alberto Queiro, the mystic shepherd, Ricardo Reis, the melancholic doctor, and Alvaro de Campos, the passionate modernist engineer. All of them were created to express aspects of Pessoa's inner world, aspects he couldn't reconcile under a single identity. Each one was, in a sense, an alternative Pessoa, an attempt to understand the self by splitting it into multiple pieces. But then there was Bernardo Soares, the author of the Book of Disquiet. Soares isn't a heteronym in the traditional sense. He is more of a shadowy, spectral figure, a fragmented self that does not quite belong to any of the other identities Pessoa had created. He is, in essence, a fragment of Pessoa himself, an echo of his inner turmoil, of his struggles with existence, meaning, and identity. Soares writes, not in the pursuit of a coherent narrative, but as an exploration of his disquiet, his disillusionment with life, and his inability to reconcile the various selves within him. As Soares reflects in the Book of Disquiet, "I am the soul of a stranger in the world, lost to all, abandoned by all, and indifferent to all." At its core, the Book of Disquiet is a meditation on the absurdity of existence. Soares, like Pessoa, is consumed by a deep sense of existential detachment. He perceives the world as fragmented, incoherent, and without any meaning. "I live in a world that is not mine," Soares states. "A world that is only mine because I live in it, and yet it is not mine at all." This, however, does not lead to nihilism or despair. Rather, it creates a space for reflection. Soares is constantly split between the desire to escape this disquiet and the need to confront it, to embrace it even. The book's disjointed nature, its fragments of thoughts and observations, mimic the fractured way in which Soares experiences the world. The world, in his eyes, is a series of disconnected moments, fleeting sensations, and half-formed ideas. And yet, despite this disillusionment, he still thrives to find meaning, even if he never quite succeeds. One of the most striking themes of the Book of Disquiet is its exploration of solitude and the inner life. Soares, in many ways, a solitary figure, locked in a state of perpetual introspection, he finds himself drifting through life, observing the world with detachment but never quite participating in it. His inner world is rich with complex thoughts and emotions, but this only amplifies his sense of isolation. "I am alone, but in a way that does not give me peace," Soares admits. "I am a being of solitude, yet I cannot truly be alone." This resonates deeply with Pessoa's own experiences as an individual, who despite interacting with the world through his many personas, remained fundamentally alone. The book, in this sense, is a kind of personal confession, an attempt to give voice to the silent, unspoken parts of the self. Pessoa's philosophy is one of fragmentation. For him, the self is not a unified, consistent entity. Instead, it was a collection of competing forces, a quilt of different identities, all vying for control. "There is no real self," Pessoa once wrote, "only masks to wear and stories to tell." This is where Pessoa's existentialism interacts with his literary work. The quest for meaning, the search for identity, and the struggle against the inherent fragmentation of the self. Pessoa's many heteronyms represent the different ways in which a person can inhabit the world, each one offering a different perspective, a different path to understand, but none of them capable of providing a complete answer. I am neither what I think nor what I feel. I am what I dream, Pessoa once mused. The Book of Disquiet is perhaps the clearest exploration of this fragmented self. It is not a cohesive narrative, but a collection of disjointed thoughts, observations, and reflections. It is a book that, like Pessoa's life, never quite comes together in a satisfying way, and yet it's the sense of incompleteness that gives it power. In its brokenness, the book reflects the brokenness of the self, the irreconcilable contradictions that lie at the heart of existence. The origins of the Book of Disquiet are as much a mystery as the book itself. The manuscript was discovered after Pessoa's death, with fragments of scattered text across various textbooks. Pessoa never intended for these fragments to form a cohesive whole, and they were not edited or organized in a meaningful way before his passing. As Pessoa himself noted, "I am the book I never wrote, the story that never came to life." The book is, in essence, a posthumous creation, a glimpse into the mind of a man who never fully understood himself, who never sought to. It is as much a product of Pessoa's fragmented self as it is a window into his view of the world. The disjointed, unfinished nature of the text only serves to highlight the central theme of existential disquiet. The sense that life is inherently incomplete, that we are all just fragments drifting in an ocean of uncertainty. Pessoa's legacy is one of contradictions and paradoxes. He created an entire literary universe, yet he was, at the same time, profoundly isolated from it. He gave life to characters who were more real than he ever felt himself to be, and in doing so, he explored the vast, uncharted territories of the human mind. Places where identity, meaning, and existence become tangled, where nothing is ever whole and nothing ever quite makes sense. As Pessoa himself wrote, "I am the sum of my own contradictions." In the Book of Disquiet, Pessoa left behind a work that is as fragmented and elusive as the man himself. It is a book that speaks to the complexities of identity, the absurdity of existence, and the deep, lingering disquiet that haunts us all. And in the end, it is this disquiet, this perpetual tension between being and non-being, that is the truest reflection of Fernando Pessoa's life and work. The author who never existed, created by a man who never truly understood himself, continues to resonate with readers who, like Pessoa, finds himself lost in the quiet, fragmented spaces of their own mind. As Pessoa himself said, "I am the contradiction that refuses to be resolved."